Welcome to the Second Bite Podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Todd Taskey again with the Second Bite Podcast. I have a tremendous guest today, Jonathan B. Smith, with us from EOS Worldwide. Jonathan, super happy to have you.
Terrific. Really happy to be here. Thanks, Todd.
Hey, and Jonathan, before we jump in, and we got a ton of stuff to get to, which I'm super excited about, I do want to thank the good people at EOS Worldwide. And we're going to talk a lot about this. And I used to think EOS was one of the best kept secrets in the small business, medium business arena. And then I just keep hearing about it over and over and over again from my clients. And EOS is an entrepreneurial operating system with an integrated group of tools that will, I think, benefit anybody, specifically companies that are somewhere between 10 employees and 200 employees. I have heard my clients on this podcast and others. If you're listening, we did a great podcast with Kevin Auergen from Bayshore Solutions. He talks about how he used traction and how he used an integrator from EOS help him and the firm that acquired him make sure that their integration was super successful. Wes from High Level Marketing literally told me that EOS saved his life, saved his marriage, saved his business. I would imagine this is the kind of stuff that you hear pretty regular, which we're going to get into right now, but it is, a great honor to have the people at EOS sponsor us, support this community. I have a contention, which you and I are going to unpack today, that EOS companies that run on that EOS, which is the entrepreneurial operating system, when they transact, they do so at a premium. But for all the years before that, life is easier, better, more profitable, happier employees, and on and on and on. So, Jonathan B. Smith, thanks for being here. I want to have you describe, if you will, what is EOS and put it in context in terms of how big the company is, how big the reach is, how many implementers are there, all of that, please.
So EOS Worldwide is actually a worldwide company. We have franchisees all over the world: Australia, Europe, Middle East, Asia. So we have 400 franchisees around the world. Our target market client, so we say the target market client is 10 to 250 employees, and it's typically $2 to $50 million in revenue. Growth-oriented, open-minded, willing to learn, frustrated, want help, and they're generally privately held. So we generally start with a privately held company. That's what it looks like 80% of the time when we walk in the room.
It's interesting. One of the things that I've heard from my clients that they love about EOS is that it really can be an easy button, right? So I can read the book and I can do all this myself, or I can hire a guy like you, which is termed as an implementer, to make it work at my company. Can you talk about what that process is like?
Yeah, so why would you run the meeting yourself if you could hire an expert to run your meeting? I've heard that from a bunch of CEOs. God, this is fabulous. Just come and run my meeting for me. We run a proven process, which we call the EOS Proven Process. And literally it goes from, hey, I had a warm call with you, to we did a 90-minute meeting, which our 90-minute meeting is basically a capabilities presentation. And then from there, we put foundational tools in place. And then we meet quarterly and 2 days annually for roughly 2 years with a client. But I've had clients I've been with for 7 or 8 years at this point. But if someone wants to go run it themselves and they say, we're done, we're 80+% strong in what we call the EOS model, we high five and say, great, you guys graduate, and I'm looking to pick up the next client. Refer someone and refer one of your friends if you want them to have the same experience you did.
And so you've been doing this for how long now?
So I was Gino's second client. So
and who's Gino?
Gino Wickman is the founder of EOS Worldwide. He wrote a book called Traction. I met him before he had even written the book Traction. So he was the founder and the visionary for the business, the original visionary. So I started in 2002 using
And
the tools.
people would call you the most experienced, the number one guy. Is that the right lingo?
I call myself an expert EOS implementer. I am the de facto leader in the New York market. There are other people who are equally experienced, but I tend to work in New York and I've done like 850 client days.
So let me ask, and this is the part I want to dig into some, because there's a bunch of books out there, right? Good to Great, on and on. There's a whole bunch of other, books that I can learn from. I've never seen so many entrepreneurs kind of point to EOS, not even as a book, but as a thing, a infrastructure to my business. So, in maybe you could describe a little bit as to why that has had the kind of penetration and the success that it's had.
So the idea with EOS is that Good to Great was used as one of the books that Gino originally read to go create what we call this operating system. So when Gino called it an operating system, he didn't realize that iOS for your Mac was also going to be thought of. When we say operating system, people think, oh, it must be for my phone.
Right.
The reality is it's the way we actually run the business when we say operating system. And so he read a whole bunch of books, synthesized them into an operating system and a way of actually running your business. So if we're talking to MBA folks who have their MBAs, EOS, I often refer to it as a strategy execution system, similar to what you might have done in organizational development first semester in your MBA, but we do it in an applied fashion. We actually take those tools and we implement them into your business.
So give me an example.
The example would be, so if one of the components of the EOS model is vision, we say there's 8 questions to that vision, and we want them shared by everyone in the organization. So if you had 200 people, we want everyone understanding where we're going, getting them rowing in the same direction, and literally being able to say, here's a 2-page document that we keep everyone on the same page, understanding what are your core values? What are the behaviors we expect? What's our core focus? Where are we going to focus our energy? So there's always all this shiny stuff over on the side. How do we keep you focused? What's the long-term goal, which we call 10-year target? So when I started with Gino, I was his second client. Our 10-year target was 10,000 clients running on EOS. We've now actually achieved that. So now it's 100,000 clients running on EOS. How do you market your business? What does it look like 3 years from now? What are the goals we're going to do this year? What are the goals we're going to do this quarter? What are the goals we're going to push off? And we're ruthless about prioritizing, compartmentalizing, prioritizing things. So that is an example of one of the tools. We call it the Vision Traction Organizer, to help you get organized around how you're going to execute your plan, both from a vision and a traction standpoint.
Right. So devil's advocate for a second. I would imagine you've had guys that say, you know what, vision and goals, and that's soft stuff. I want to drive sales. I want to, have a more profitable business. 2-part question. Do you find resistance to that up front? And is there any way to have a really successful business if you don't have a shared vision?
Well, again, we go back to the target market I mentioned earlier. The beauty of having a target market of a growth-oriented, open-minded, appreciative, respectful, frustrated, wanting help, privately held, is if I'm in the room with the person, I'm like, we've been doing this for forever. It's always worked like this. I'm like, you're just not in enough pain. Okay, great. You're not in enough pain. Doesn't seem like target market to me. Let's move on. So, and us as EOS implementers, we're like, please just follow the process. It's been used by more than 10,000 companies over time to execute amazing results. And if you just follow the process, I can assure you that you're gonna get what you want out of your business.
So step one, you help not only your client with their vision, but you help that vision permeate down into the organization so everybody knows the same language, but also what it is that we're really doing here. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I don't know if I would call it step one. It's, we have a proven process. It's one of the components. We say vision without traction is hallucination. So we actually start with traction, and we start with who's accountable for what, because before we make commitments on the vision, we want to in fact know, hey, okay, so you're in the sales seat and you think you're going to do this big number next year. Okay, so you realize you're committing to it, you own it. So we say all evil resides in the accountability chart. And if
So,
we can,
so traction is where you start. Is that correct?
we start with traction. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, and again, your client is the CEO. Do you kind of help? I would say push him or guide him in the right direction. That obviously somebody in the organization is in charge of sales, somebody is in charge of accounting, somebody is in charge of delivery, and so on.
So
How does that? How
let's
does
get
that?
clear. Our
Yeah.
client is the owner of the business ultimately,
Right.
but our role is really threefold. We work with the leadership team. In the private equity world, they call it a management team, but we call it a leadership team. I am the teacher of, so EOS is this book traction that we have, right? I am the teacher and the expert on that. I am the coach for that team. I am not the coach for the individual CEO. I am the coach of that team. That's the team that really I want to be focused on, and then facilitate conversations amongst that team. So teacher, coach, facilitator, oftentimes they'll have the CEO might have a different coach, an executive coach who's helpful in the process.
Right.
But that's not our role. Our role is teacher, coach, and facilitator for the management team.
And in your sweet spot, the guys you focus on, how many are on that management team typically?
3 to 7.
And they all have their responsibilities, and you drive traction through that group.
Yeah. So, typically, let's just say who typically is on that group: sales and marketing, operations and finance, president, COO, CEO, president, COO, maybe a CEO. So that would be 5 people, but HR could be there and IT could be there, and depending on the business, different folks would be on the team. Every team is custom fit. That's typically who's there.
And is there a place that guys and women's, the CEO, typically see early results or low hanging fruit or immediate wins? I know you've been doing it a long time. Does something show pretty regularly that they could expect?
Yeah. So it's always interesting. Sometimes even in the 90-minute meeting, which is our capabilities presentation, just having that conversation and clarity over who's accountable for what. And sometimes we say if 2 people are accountable, no one is accountable. One person could be in 2 seats, but 2 people are accountable, no one's accountable. So that often shows up. The ability to set goals. So we call them quarterly rocks. So early on, we set rocks and we say, how are you doing? Are you getting them done? What's happening? You'll see the folks who are super accountable are getting them done. And there's sometimes some folks over there who are failing or flailing for one reason or another.
And who sets those rocks? Is it the management team? Is it the CEO? Is it a combination?
Management team as a team, true team, right? The CEO or often has influence, but the reality is the most effective teams, like Google found through Project Aristotle, are balanced without a CEO dictating. It's the team itself coming up with those goals that are most effective.
So the low hanging fruit or the first signs that this is really working here is typically what?
First 30 days, it's like, oh my God, we have a meeting every week, which we call the level 10 meeting. And that meeting is all of a sudden driving accountability. It's driving visibility. We're looking at our numbers. We're talking about our customers. We're talking about our employees, and we're solving issues. So we say we solve the issues, we set them up, and we knock them down, and they go away forever. So those conversations are happening as opposed to ad hoc meetings with the various participants in the group, but no one's getting the same message. They're not on the same page necessarily.
Yeah, that makes sense. And is there anything that, from a CEO perspective, they find most surprising that kind of happens regularly?
Usually it's that I've been saying this for 8 years and no one seems to have heard me.
And now all of a sudden the magic has happened, right?
You're like, why did it take you to show up so I could get my team to hear what I'm saying? But we have to get everyone on the same page so that it's shared by all.
Is there magic to having a third party kind of let them get to it themselves versus the CEO dictating it?
Well, there's magic to having a process. So 10% of the CEOs can self-implement and just make it work. I have seen that. But there is an advantage where what's the worst thing that happens? A CEO fires me? Like, okay. Our job is to enter the danger and have the hard conversations and even call the CEO out on their. So having a third party in the room, sort of evens the playing field a bit. We have expertise in the system. I work with 125 different clients. So you can do pattern matching or pattern recognition across clients and cross-pollinate. So it's definitely advantageous to have an implementer.
I would think so, like in most things, right? And then as an implementer, how many clients do you typically work with at the same time?
About 25.
Gotcha. And when somebody starts, do they have either biases or is there a typical, this is my biggest concern before they get started?
So we have a model, an EOS model. The model has 6 key components. I never know when I meet with someone where their relative weaknesses are going to be. So I often don't do a ton of research before I go meet with them because I want it to unfold and unpack. So the reality is there is not one problem. Different clients have different problems. You take a client and I'm looking at myself and I'm like, everyone on this team is Ivy League educated. Everyone on this team has an Ivy League MBA. And the reality is they don't communicate really well together. Their EQ is low, their IQ is high. So
and you've had clients like that.
I've had clients like that. And I'm just amazed because they're so capable in terms of horsepower, but the ability to manage emotions isn't quite there. And we work on that.
Yeah.
So we call that healthy. That's the healthy component of it.
And you call that out? Do you identify that and call that out when you see those issues?
Yeah. So it's art, not science, calling that out. So people can this is where the facilitation comes in. So yes, you call that out, but people can only take it at a certain rate of, I just have to have good judgment in terms of, which we say it, are you willing to die on that hill today?
Yeah.
You have to pick and choose which ones.
And so, as I mentioned when we started the conversation, I've seen a lot of guys in transactions that we've done, I would say, get the high end of the range in terms of valuation given their industry. I know you've been involved in helping clients through transactions, preparing for transactions. Have you seen the same thing? Have you any feedback on what you've seen or observed or learned from clients as they go into a transaction, the reaction that the market has towards their organization or their systems?
So certainly we tend to be better organized. So think of having that 2-page VTO in place, and you can actually walk an investor through it and walk them through the strategy. I've had cases where we went to market and then we had an ERP system that wasn't, we felt there was too much risk in implementing a new ERP system. We went back to EOS, de-risked the business, implemented the new ERP system, demonstrated with data that it in fact worked, and then we're able to actually, get a significantly higher multiple on better EBITDA number. So the reality is the system, what it does is, I call it business hygiene. So it produces business hygiene so that when an investor comes in, we're going to help with EOS produce operating returns. The investor is going to add substantial strategic expertise, relationships, and be able to financial engineer the balance sheet, which we don't do with EOS in general. But we do help improve operating returns for sure.
And I think those tend to go hand in hand, right? Because we don't necessarily care about what two numbers get multiplied together. We care about the other side of the equals, right? How big that number is.
Always driving EBITDA.
I mentioned when we spoke before, I've got two clients specifically now that are using an integrator and EOS to integrate the two companies, an implementer to help them integrate the two companies post-close. I know you've been involved in a bunch of transactions for your clients that have been sold. Have you kept in touch with any of them post-close? Because my question is, I assume integration is just much easier when you have a system that you can plug into versus none at all.
So a couple of things. A lot of times, if a company is sold, I continue to work with them. So if it's a investor who, bought them for a platform, we continue to run EOS. So for sure, I stay in touch with them. There's other clients where I sold and they got integrated, and up front it was easy, and I stayed in touch with them, and they're like, "You changed my life, you changed my world. It's been fabulous. When I do the next transaction, I'll be back in touch." So it works really, really well. And I like to say, the only reason you stop doing EOS, you never stop doing EOS. It's like going to the gym with a trainer. Why'd you stop using the trainer? Because it was working.
Right. Never good advice, right?
Exactly.
When you work with clients and they go through a transaction, and I guess it's hard to know the unknown because they avoided potential problems in terms of getting through due diligence and then a successful integration. Is there any one or two things that you might point to that are most valued by your clients when they do a transaction because of EOS?
Well, one thing is, generally they don't have to sell their business because we help them create a self-managing business. They're selling their business because they're getting a valuation that is bigger than they ever expected, but they could continue to run their business if they want. So they have a lot of confidence when they go to market. The other thing is that we've worked through a lot of strategy up front. So they know their business and they have confidence about the business plan that we're running against the VTO. They have confidence about the people who are in the business. We have clarity about where we need to change or where we need to adjust. Like a lot of times what's happening is, my clients no longer want to write the checks out of their personal pocketbook, or they're not willing to put the growth capital into the business, and they're looking for an expert to help them.
Makes sense. And we talk about that on several episodes where guys have specifically pointed to that as the reason for that transaction. Can you talk about what somebody should expect in terms of, I know you rattled it off earlier, but the time commitment, let's say from the owner or the CEO, how much of their time will be committed to this in the first 90 days, the first year, and the first 2 years?
So what we like to say is, in the first 60 days, we meet 3 full days with the leadership team. So 3 full days means for roughly 8 hours. We say 7 hours plus or minus an hour, because people run out of energy at that point.
Right.
They're going to meet weekly for 90 minutes with their team in what we call a level 10 meeting. They're just going to replace some other meeting they're already having. So I'm not sure that that's additional work. Then we meet quarterly. Every quarter we meet for 8 hours, and then 2 days annually. So I say over a period of about 2 years, they'll meet with me approximately, or their EOS implementer, 10 days out of that year. out of those 2 years. And then the really hard thing is, are they committed to making the hard changes? So part of our question is, are they frustrated and do they really want help? Or do they want someone to complain to? And the reality is EOS is about getting traction and making those hard decisions. It's the will to make the change that's really differentiates the folks who are the big winners from the others.
And I would imagine that's easier with a partner or an implementer than it would be trying to do it myself.
Yeah, we're not emotionally committed to, the fact that for the last 25 years you've run the business this way and someone started with you, and so we're like, okay, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity? Are they the right person in the right seat for that job?
Yeah.
I don't know them, but my job is just to make sure that we're executing against the plan and ultimately in your world producing EBITDA.
Right. And I think to your point, producing EBITDA in a steady, reliable way that they don't have to rely on themselves to solve every problem and bring in every client is what makes the business more fun and enjoyable, right? From that standpoint.
Yeah, and we'll say we're going to create a process-centric business, not a hero-centric business. I might have walked in and you have a hero-centric business, but we're only interested in running a process-centric business.
And by the way, it's interesting because everybody that I do a transaction with at some point would like to transition away from the business. Sometimes they'd like to do it at close. In a service business, it's pretty hard to do. But in a hero-centric business, it's impossible to do because that's what they bought, right? You're going to be there for quite a while. And unless you have a system you can point to, no buyer is going to believe that the company is not reliant on you in a significant way.
And then you're going to be a couple turns less because of that.
Probably so. So let me add I'll bring us to a conclusion here with a couple last questions. Having worked with as many guys as you have for over a decade, is there one or two attributes that you see most often in those, best businesses, whether they decide they want to sell, whether they sell for a premium or it's a self-managed business? Is there two real strong indicators that would lead you to believe someone's going to be successful with this?
So my best leaders create high performance teams. So I played football in college with Eric Mangini, who coached the Jets. So he played right next to me. I saw him on the street and I say, you coach football teams. I just coach small and medium sized businesses. The objective is the same, getting to an exit like we've talked about as part of being on the, Super Bowl for an SMB. So that's number one, the teams. The second is, are they willing to have really, really, really hard conversations? We say the team health aspect of having hard conversations, having absolute organizational clarity, making those hard decisions. That's the difference between those who really get what they want and those who complain about not getting what they want. So
That's great. So last question is this: you've been, by a lot of different measures, very successful in your business career. Is there a person and or a book and or an experience that has made a lasting impression on you, perhaps in addition to the traction book, because that one's pretty obvious, that you would share that you think would be helpful?
So my godfather was the vice chairman of Donaldson, Lufkin and Genrep, so DLJ, that ultimately sold to CSFB. His name's Dick Pector. And he taught me one thing. When he answered the phone, he answers the phone still to this day. He doesn't say hello. He says, how can I help you? Because it helps him get to the answer faster. So it's a pretty amazing tool. I use it all the time. When I get on the phone with someone, I say, how can I help you? And they tell you what they want, and it accelerates the conversation.
Interesting. You are in New York City. do you serve clients just in New York City? Do you serve clients nationally? Do you serve clients in a specific sector of the market?
So I prefer to work in New York City. So I pretty much, for the most part, work in New York City. I pretty much work on the most complex EOS cases. So they often call me and they say, hey, this is this team raised $150 million. We're not sure who to send it to. Can you talk to them? Occasionally I will travel. Generally, just what I see myself doing is I do a lot of healthcare, a lot of multi-site specialty healthcare. I even have payers that I'm working with. Some manufacturing, financial services, professional services. Just that's the kind of business that's in and around the city. A lot of construction, but we're generalists.
Right.
But that's what tends to show up for me.
And if I'm in Bethesda or Miami or Dallas or San Francisco, if I go to eosworldwide.com, I can find a local person there that could be my implementer.
You can find an implementer there, on the website. There's actually even an EOSimplementers.com website where you can search.
Excellent.
And I could also help curate a solution if there's a specific case. But there's 400 trained people around the world who can
That's
help
great.
with your EOS implementation.
And if somebody is in New York or wanted to talk to you or reach out to you, I know Jonathan B. Smith, you can be found on LinkedIn. How else would they get to you?
So they could use jonathan.smith@eosworldwide.com, or my phone number is 212-920-4424. And my buddies from the South said I have to have a 212 number. So that's my mobile. Yeah, of course.
Here's the other thing. For everybody listening, you can test Jonathan to see if he answers the phone. How can I help you? Right?
Exactly.
We'll put that right to work. Jonathan, this is really helpful. As I said, it's we spent a half an hour here. I'm sure we could spend a few days digging in and learning. I think the Traction book, the resources online, or to reach out to you directly, I can say I have seen the results of this in terms of better businesses, better lives of entrepreneurs, and bigger exits. So I don't know what else you could say about a service or support business for entrepreneurs that would be more compelling than that. Thank you. I know you're busy. I appreciate you spending the time that you did with us today, and we'll wish you a good rest of the day.
Same to you, Todd. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.